So this is a demo on how to make our masks. They come in two sizes, medium to large and small to medium. They have a filter pocket like this. So they're made out of 3 pieces of fabric, usually a contrast outer and an inside lining. Same with the large one. And elastic. We make the elastic or the channels for the elastic so you can change the elastic if they wear out, or if you prefer you can also add a piece of jersey or t-shirt yarn if you don't like elastic behind your ears. Got 3 pieces, so this is the outer fabric and that's the lining top and lining bottom. So they sit a little bit like this. The more pointy part is the top part of the mask. If your overlocker has a narrower setting, like a 3 needle needle on the right, then that might be a better setting to use. If doing continuous pieces, it's good to leave the chain between slightly longer. So when cutting these, trying to cut in the middle, don't try to tidy up the edges because it might start unraveling. So it's better to just leave those like that. Next step is to sew with the sewing machine down along here, trying to keep 1/4 inch or about 6-7 millimeters of seam allowance. Now on the straight side, that's where we need to secure the seam so it doesn't unravel. So what I tend to do is, like, you tuck the little tail from the overlocker and then do a little backwards and forwards, back stitch, and then come out. And then the same on this one, so the straight bottom edge, get the little tail, tuck it in there, so if it's working with continuous pieces, you can just stitch them in a chain and then cut them after. Then we are back at the overlocker. So you want to overlock this edge. Best thing to do is open it like that and then overlock the straight edge all in one. Same with this one, this edge. I'm trying to do it on the top side, it just looks a bit tidier. We also want to overlock the outside of the mask. If your overlocker's thread tension isn't quite right, you might find that you can see the thread on that side, which you don't want. In that case, you probably want to go over this seam on your sewing machine. So you want to keep the seam allowance to about 6-7 millimeters or 1/4 inch. So I'll just tuck the little tail under there, put that down. You don't need to worry about securing the seam at the top or the bottom because these seams are going to be sewn over anyway. The important thing is just to check that the thread tension here is nice. And then the next step is to put the lining. So I usually start with the top. So I just open up this mask outer side, and then the same with the top lining. So I want the right sides facing together, and I will put the seam allowance of the lining and the seam allowance of the outside facing opposite direction, because it'll just create less bulk. You can put a little clip on there if you want, and at the end here you will have about 2 centimeters space. That's meant to be like that. And then you can start right at the edge, again keeping a quarter of an inch or 6-7 millimeters seam allowance. When you get to the top here, try not to create too much of a point. It's a rounded corner rather than a point. So that's how that one looks. And we'll do the other side. So again, it's the curved edge. Right sides together, seam allowance facing opposite directions, clip it on like that, and then here you want these to be in kind of line there, so creating that same gap. Start at the end, quarter of an inch, again make sure that these two pieces are in line at the bottom. Like that. Now we're going to fold these pieces over, but we want to ease the curves, so we're going to clip into the fabric a little bit. So especially around here at the top part, this is the curve where we need to clip into, but I usually just put 1, 2, 3, 4. Be careful not to clip into this seam, obviously. And with this top part here, I just take a bit of chunk out like that, and then continue to clip into it. And on the other side, the same. So now we want to top stitch. The important thing with a top stitch is that you want to keep it consistent and same distance all the way, and you do it from the inside. So you start right at the edge, and you can use this other seam line here. This little tail can be your guidelines of where to fold the fabric. And put that down. And then you're rolling the lining over, so you're creating probably about 1 to 2 mil of the fabric from the outside showing, which that means that on the actual side of the mask we won't be seeing any of the lining. Poke it. Again, try not to do too much of a pointy at top of the nose. It's more of a curve. rather than a point. Like this. And then repeat that on the other side. Now it doesn't matter if the thread on the inside is not matching the lining. It's more important that the bobbin thread is matching the outside fabric. You can stitch the top thread with a matching thread to the lining, but you need to make sure that your sewing machine's thread tension is good enough so your thread doesn't show through the other side. The next step is to sew the sides. So the top flap goes over the bottom flap, like that. So that's top of the mask, bottom of the masks. Now the little bits of thread, at this point it's quite good to do a little trim. Like that. The label goes on the right side here. So the website part is facing down. Just put that there for now. The elastic for the small to medium size, which is the one I'm sewing at the moment, the elastics are cut for 25 centimeters, and for the larger size it's 26 centimeters. So at this stage we fold once like that, about same, like 1/4 inch or 7mm. And then we put the elastic there as well, and then we fold all of this again. You make sure that this part is quite straight and flat. So we folded it once and then we fold it over again. And the label should be nicely tucked in there evenly. And the second fold is about 2 centimeters. So it'll look something like that. And make sure that the edges of the seam is not poking out the top or the bottom, so you can adjust that a little bit so the fold is completely inside the mask. When you're happy with that, sew it down. So you want to kind of secure the seam at the bottom and at the top, but try not to create too much bulk. So about a couple of back stitches and back again should be enough. Like that. And then we do the same on the other side, no label this time. And it's quite nice if the seam here is quite close to the edge. Just trying to keep that as close as possible, or 1 or 2 millimeters in. So that's finished mask. Now all we have to do is tie the elastic. Now 1 centimeter makes quite a big difference behind your ears. So these are cut to 25, but on some people that might be too big. Hopefully not too small. That's why we're doing 2 sizes. The way to do it is like just make sure the elastic is not twisted. Get the 2 sides together, and then just pull it a little bit and make a knot. And you want the knot to be kind of as far out as possible, and then just roll it into the seam like that. The finished masks, you can measure them, so from the widest point to non-stretched elastics like that. On the small side that should be about 17 centimeters, and on the larger side, medium to large, you just pull that like that without stretching the elastic, it's about 19 centimeters. So yeah, those 2 centimeters makes all the difference in sizes. And if you compare the two, it doesn't look like there's much of a difference, but on the face it does make a difference.